The approach that you see we will take will, well, first of all, I will talk a little bit about ICF and our capabilities. ICF is a global company that focuses on consulting primarily across many sectors, advisory, program implementation, analytics, digital engagement strategies, basically the kind of consulting we do for the aviation space. It's the full gamut of airlines, airports, aircraft. We have an aircraft practice in appraisal and valuations and so on. Aerospace and MRO, to which I belong, and I lead that practice at ICF. Sustainability, tourism, and transactions. We do have partnerships. We are an ISTAT member, and we do have partnerships with ACI, the World Travel and Tourism Council, and UNWTO as well. So our existence across the aircraft and airport space, and a partner of IATA as well. Our client base is worldwide. We have worked with a bunch of airlines, lessors, bankers, in the aviation space across the industry and across the globe. Today, we will talk about systems and how maintenance and engineering MRO systems are supporting aviation, the industry, and then some considerations for software in that space we'll share, and solutions in the context of those considerations, and what's enabling, if you will, some of those solutions, and then we conclude, of course, with some of the perspectives. So let's launch straight into it. When we look today at over the last, I would say, 10 years or so, and selections that have occurred in the airline space, about 850 airlines, our research shows us, that are using systems that have been selected, like I said, over the last 10 years. So they're really, to be honest, there may be about 1,000 airlines in the world that really matter. So most of the airlines are already on modern platforms. What's important to note here is ERP type platforms, legacy type platforms are a small percentage across the entire spectrum. So 8 to 10%, 13% actually of that entire population are really, on older type platforms. And there are two types represented here, which are best of breed and of course ERP style platforms as well. So it's interesting that there is modernization that already occurs across the industry as far as systems being used. Yet from a survey that was taken by Capgemini of that same population, close to it, 87.4% actually say that their current solutions are just average or below average, and that's really interesting. And 64.1% says paperless is going to be very difficult to achieve by 2022. And to the right on screen here, 78.1% say that really the gaps are around digital threads. And again, in the 76% range is that if the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, which are the aircraft manufacturers, engine manufacturers, close the digital thread, or should play a primary role, in fact, in closing that digital thread. So it's really interesting that although most of the airlines today have, selected over the last 10 years or so, sort of leading edge technology solutions and systems, that they are recognizing that the digital threads are not complete, if you will. So what's causing this split, right? And why is there this digital thread sort of a fragmentation, if you will, between the OEMs and the airlines? Some of the considerations we will spend some time talking about. Before we do that, too, when we look at the current fleet, and despite COVID, we have seen that the fleet is actually moving from legacy, data enhanced, and new generation. There's a mix across the existing airline fleet. And legacy platforms, aircraft platforms, that is. In 2019, 88% is going down by 2024 to 67%. This is accelerated, as a matter of fact, with COVID. We've seen a lot of retirements of quote unquote legacy type platforms. the data enhanced sort of transition, and then of course into new generation, next generation, modern aircraft is getting there a lot faster as far as newer aircraft are concerned. So the nature of what is actually controlled with these software systems is changing, and it's changing fairly quickly. You know, from 12% in 2019, moving to 34%, you know, in 2024. So one reason we see as a consideration is that airlines typically have legacy type systems, and I'm using that term loosely, and what they currently have installed at the airline for doing these transactional type processes, if you will, for configuration control, maintenance programs, reliability, just asset management in general. And they're bringing in now, as we say, more sophisticated digitalized asset. They're going through these transactional layers. So they are trying to take aircraft that were built, let's say, 70s and 80s, and try to control it in very much the same way the modern aircraft, of course, are being controlled. So one perspective we have is, well, why not ignore those transactional systems and control digitalized asset just from the outset for what it is, right? Instead of going through these multiple layers. So that's one consideration of working outside in rather than inside out. The second is when you look at all the software applications out there that controls maintenance and engineering functions, and it's made up typically of a core system, and then you have peripheral systems, then you have this sort of a plethora, if you will, of multiple systems that actually make up your end state solution at any typical airline. So that's one of the other considerations as well. The third consideration is because you have that plethora and that mix, then bolt-on niche systems and integrations are in focus. So therefore you have to connect, if you will, several external modules or add-on or best of breeds that, you know, within their own right for specialist functions, records and publications, technical training, and so on and so forth. So you have a core platform, and then of course you're connecting, you know, these different things. But then you are focusing really on integrations and bolting things together. Next consideration is that, gosh, the rate of change is so rapid that when you look to the right of this, which are the real core things that you should be controlling from a business standpoint, or what should be your primary focus. Instead, we are focused more to the left of this, which is all these new things that are coming on, hardware and software, of course, solutions. So then that's taking the attention of quote unquote progress and the focus, of course, away from what you really should be focused on because you just can't keep up, quite frankly. And which of those solutions should you adopt, of course, to achieve the things on the right-hand side. So you get caught into that cycle, if you will, of continually analyzing and prioritizing platforms and features. Fifth is when you consider digital maturity throughout the manufacturing process. So you have the engineering function of building, you know, new aircraft and specifications and so on, and then the actual manufacturing process. And then that gets into the cycle of operation cycle and servicing and the retirement. So if you look at this as the complete life cycle, if you will, of the aircraft. And to the left, we see that in the manufacturing space, the digital maturity is 98% plus. So these aircraft that actually come off the shop floor. An example I like to make here is that when you look at 1990, the Boeing 777 aircraft was just a notion, and that actually rolled out in 1995 as a fully production unit, the very first aircraft. It was produced entirely paperless. So it's pretty interesting that back in 1995, aircraft that were produced in a paperless environment, today you can fill the belly of the aircraft with paper, right, on a typical 777 aircraft. And that's really interesting that we are not mature in controlling to the right of that, all these different functions throughout the life cycle of the aircraft in a truly paperless environment, right? So why did that really exist? I mean, it's a challenge that we really have to consider as to how we can overcome that. And we are trying to, of course, as I said, if we look at it from the inside out, like we are today, that's why the right side looks, of course, a little bit slower than, of course, the left side. What's key about this, though, is you look at configuration of the aircraft as being common throughout every part of its cycle. So that may be a common thread, right, that we can explore. And we look at the functions that really occur on the operator and the service cycles as well. And that's common to the manufacturing process. So it's something, again, for us to consider as to why we can't or are not taking this forward. So given those considerations, there are 5 considerations that we looked at. And these 5 considerations here is, again, from the inside out versus outside in. There's several applications focusing on integrations, and then we prioritize these new functions and features versus business objectives. And then functional maturity throughout the digital thread. So the key we would like to recommend here to the right of the slide is inheriting that digital thread. It already exists. Why are we reinventing it, right? Taking highly digitalized assets, which are the new aircraft coming in, data enhanced and modern legacy aircraft, are very different from legacy aircraft. And you want to maximize the existing capabilities that comes built, if you will, into that kind of equipment, and then make your business mandates your priority. So these 3 things to the right-hand side here should be in focus. But, it's not that easy to achieve. Traditional methods and systems may not be enough. It's something for us to think about. And as you said, acknowledging this new digitalized asset is one of our biggest challenges. Now, what are the enablers today that exist that we should pay attention to, of course, to make this happen for us? Some quick examples here is when you look on the engine side, digital twins already exist, right? And very robust. GE, Rolls-Royce has some examples here, Siemens as well, where there are actual libraries, if you will, digital twins already exist, and digital threads already exist for the equipment throughout the manufacture process. And then you look at the words of Ted Colbert at Boeing Global Services. If we look at a model-based approach to how we are doing maintenance, and then adopt that, as it were, then it becomes easier for us to inherit as you control these assets moving forward into their service cycles. Another thing here is you look at digital readiness logs. So you look at a typical airline when an aircraft gets delivered, and you take a readiness log, and then you replicate that, if you will, in software. You build a configuration of the aircraft and control it. But think about it. We are at the stage right now where RFID tags are controlled on all the parts that go into the airplane at manufacturer. Why do we not just have those same RFID tags continue into the service of the aircraft, right? And have readiness logs generated automatically from those tags. So it's something for us to think about as well. A third consideration here is when you look at the dynamic that's occurring with the OEMs and the partnerships that are occurring with MROs, we're seeing more and more of collaboration, right? With the OEMs collaborating with the MRO networks. And some examples here are shown here with Honeywell Forge, for example, Lufthansa Technics, and how these platforms are being used collaboratively. And we would say that you would see more and more of this occurring. So again, if the beginning of this presentation, we talked about how the OEMs can influence that digital thread and continuity. And we are indeed seeing that there is an existence in the OEM space for that. But really, how can we now start inheriting more and more in the MRO space and the airline community as well? So it exists, and with a focus on health monitoring, condition monitoring, rather than the old concept, if you will, of hard time type tracking, if you will. And in that vein as well, MSG3 is 30 years old. I mean, as of 2020, it is 30 years old. And task codes that are in fact existing currently in MSG3 don't speak to AHM, health monitoring and condition monitoring, which is really interesting. The existing task codes, discard tasks and so on. But why health monitoring, which you are doing today, quite frankly, on the new equipment, it can negate some of these tasks that are traditionally residing within these manuals that guide us in terms of how we control maintenance. So it's something that we need to consider as well as a new philosophy. Perhaps MSG4 might be relevant now. These new standards that exist across ATA and IATA standards as well should be built into software, and we should also encourage additional adoption, if you will, or stronger adoption of some of these. Typically, what happens is that the software that exists today would publish that, we conform to, spec, 2000, chapter, whatever that you have for regulations and execution standards and so on, and data transfer and that kind of stuff. But it should become, again, more standard, where these sort of protocols, if you will, are built in as a normal sort of an approach moving forward. So across the spectrum of MRO, you do have at least guidance and protocols that can tell us, if you will. And then loadable software. I mean, it's becoming so popular, loadable software on the new equipment as well. If you are, in fact, now validating software configurations on a lot of new equipment that are flying, and that's going to become a way of life in the future, as a matter of fact, then why can't we do the same with hardware, right? Where at the point of control, you are validating not just software configurations, but you are validating hardware configurations as well. And that should become a natural way as to how we operate moving forward as well. Blockchain, again, and adopting blockchain, that's also a philosophy that PwC estimates savings here as well. But blockchain is a buzzword for the most part, and not truly, sort of structured as something that we will adopt moving forward. So there's an opportunity for us to capitalize on this a little bit further as well. And then, so in conclusion, that's short and sweet. And I'm sorry if I moved too quickly, but in conclusion, it's really about the time is now for us to take what the OEM is already very mature on and accelerate, if you will, adoption. The OEMs are very, very willing. The order books were full before, of course, COVID, in new airplanes. Now, of course, some of those orders have gone away. But the fact remains that the OEMs are very, very aggressive in finding other streams of revenue, because their production books, like I said, are full for the next 5 years. But they are already mature, and how can we encourage that in the aftermarket to inherit? And some considerations here would be product lifecycle management and enterprise asset management type options, as far as inheriting again throughout those common functions in the aftermarket and maintaining the asset. And then again, MSC3, A4A and IATA standards. And last but not least, which I think is a big thing here, it's really openness, trust, collaboration, if you will, of IP and leveraging available technologies collectively. So that's my presentation. Thank you for paying attention, and I hope it was useful.
Thank you. Thank you, Allan Bachan, Vice President MRO at ICF. Very, very interesting contribution, and we will get back to some of these topics later during the panel and also in a Q&A session. We are now introducing Ramūnas Paškevičius, Head of IT and Innovation at FL Technics. Ramūnas holds extensive experience in informational technologies gained during 15 years of professional activity. Prior to joining FL Technics, Ramūnas has worked with private and public sectors IT projects while developing, implementing, and managing various IT solutions for academic, state, finance, HoReCa, and other consumers. Since 2011, Ramūnas leads FL Technics team in developing, integrating, and supporting a wide range of IT solutions for MRO, sales, and administrative purposes. With a bachelor degree in business administration and management, as well as a master's degree in international trade gained at Vilnius University, Ramūnas has a clear understanding of what businesses expect from IT, as well as how IT solutions should be developed in order to ensure both smooth integration within companies' daily operation and higher engagement of the users. Welcome Ramūnas Paškevičius, Head of IT and Innovation at FL Technics.
Thank you, Riccardo, for a great introduction. Good morning, good afternoon. Okay, I'm trying now to share my presentation. I hope it will work. No demo effects like usually happens in IT. Hope you see it. Okay, so today I thought about the idea what I would like to share. Usually I share real experience from life, and sometimes people are interested to hear not only good stories but bad stories. And probably most of you I also have met in other conferences, and I was speaking about transformations and some philosophies what we're implementing in FL Technics. And today I'll share the effect, or I can say the homework we did 5 years ago during a pandemic. We hold an extensive expansion. So most MRO organizations were struggling with some issues regarding the jobs or aircrafts from airlines. And what we have done during last year in pandemic, we doubled our line stations. We had almost fully loaded hangars, and we have 4 hangars around the world, and line stations also spread in most of the continents. And the main idea and message that I would like to share with you today is how we achieve it and what future prospects we see in MRO business. So I would like to start from a short video. This is a video from our Kaunas Lithuanian airport, and as you can see, there are a lot of parked aircrafts, and this is probably the great impact what we have done with our customers, introducing into MRO business a transparency. What does it mean? It means that 5 years ago we started a lean journey, and we have started to transform our business from common MRO organization, what I can call now like a Stone Age, to the modern MRO company. So we started to implement not the systems itself, but changing the mindsets of the people, saying that you need to be honest with providing the data to the systems, because this data will be analyzed. The other thing is that we are able to share this data with our customers, which led us to an interesting situation that once this pandemic happened, and as you know, the borders were closed, and usually in a common way, airline sends representatives to the MRO organization to see how the process is working on. So we already did it 3 years ago. So we have all data digitalized. I mean that we can get an approvals with the customers remotely. We can share even a video from our hangars if there is a kind of issue that we need to resolve it live with representative. So for our customers, it means that nothing changed much. So they just changed their location from our office to their offices, as well saving some money on the business trips. And working online showed that nothing may impact if there is some issues with traveling or exchanging the information. The other thing COVID also hit our mechanics. So we need to transform, so shift how to leverage the risks and how to manage the people that we could work in the hangars and minimizing the risks. So again, all the philosophy and the systems we have implemented allow us in very short time, in a couple of weeks, rearrange all the shifts. And from one type of work, we changed with another one, and it was not a big impact. It was not a big impact on a business. Actually, we knew what will happen, where will be a little bit slower, but the customers actually also were not so fast, and there was not looking for the better TET. So that's the main challenges what we have achieved, and moving forward, I think that we'll not stop on that, on working with the only MRO system, but we need to implement some new things what we have. The first one, what I would like to share will be about virtual reality, which we have our own experience with it. We have done some research, and we have a good proof of concept. And I see next 3 years, 3 other technologies that will come into play, and I'm pretty sure that it will become a commodity in next few years. The first one is augmented reality. It will help increase some quality stuff, and later I'll share my ideas about it. Now I see that drones are coming to the hangars faster and faster, so that will be a next technology that will be again a commodity in next couple of years. And predictive maintenance, but predictive maintenance in this case I'll split in maybe two areas. One is related to the smart aircraft, the other one is related to the maintenance activities in the hangars. So moving forward, we have some experience with virtual reality. It was a good challenge for us to see how we can make mechanics learn faster, because as you know that in a normal way, learning by common methodics, the sustainability of the information is around 20% maximum, what we can achieve. With virtual reality, or calling it practice by doing, people can remember up to 70% of the information. So it means that we can increase up to 3 times speed of the training procedures. And now we are doing some testing with our people and authorities to check if it might be good replacement for the on-job training. Okay, so I would like to share a short video. Hope you'll see, you'll hear the sound. And this is real example what we have done with virtual reality. This is, by the way, our real hangar in Kaunas, and this is very precise copy of it. Okay, so that's a short video of real example, and I believe that in future it will be more and more training materials online, accessible via virtual reality. And other MROs, I know that, and Part 147 organization are looking into this technology as well. Okay, try to go next. We have a technology that we're trying, and in the last years it was a little bit struggling with it. It's an augmented reality, and the main point why it's not coming to the hangars is the content. We try to contact OEMs to get some 3D models and to make it work with multiple aircrafts, and here we faced an issue. So in this case, when the content will be more accessible, and I believe OEMs will start sharing it, it will enhance this technology and it will get faster and faster inside the hangars. Besides that, integration is essential as well. I see that augmented reality standalone cannot work, but if we can integrate with MRO systems, extracting the information about the task card, performance, even to ensure the quality. For example, if I'm looking at the task and I know that the electrics or hydraulics are not turned off, so system could notify me that I need to do some pre-steps before following this task. So it might help avoid some situations. And if you have tried augmented reality glasses like Microsoft HoloLens or others, some of them are very heavy. If you would imagine the mechanic working with it for, I don't know, 12 hours, one shift, it will be a huge issue. So once all the technologies will become smaller, which fits on the helmet or on a cap, then I believe that it will come to the hangars faster. The other thing is drones, and it was interesting story. We tried to work with, even our group had a drone company, and we tried to work in the hangars, I think 4 years ago, and it was a disaster because a lot of things need to be solved. And I'm happy that year by year, and last year in I think in January, it was a show where we saw how the drones are improved. First of all, I believe that drones will be very specific in the hangars, and where we can see that the technology is now mature enough to perform an inspections or aircrafts and very precise. So they this technology will enable us to have a very good speed of inspection, shortening by tens of times. If we put on the drones a 3D scanners or similar to that, it will give us a precision, and this will lead to automation of the process. So all the reports, all the dent mapping, everything will be automated. This is what we believe that will help us to increase the productivity in the hangars. And the last thing I would like to share is about the predictive maintenance, or as I mentioned, the technology which is more related to the performance in the hangar. And we faced a couple of things. First of all, you need to be honest to yourself and provide the system a reliable data. This is what we have learned. If you do not have a reliable data what's happening in your hangars, it will not help. The other thing is IoT, Internet of Things stuff. I have some experience with technologies from Ubisense, adding some tracking for the tooling, for the ground service equipment, for the people who are working on that. And this enables MRO organization, I believe, to decrease the TET time by 20%. And the last thing is data analysis. If you have all this data, you need to bring not only mechanics to the hangars, but data analysts as well. And my last slide is about what I would recommend, if you are doing some digital transformation in your facilities or organization, is to follow a couple of rules. First of all, if you would like to change any technology, any philosophy or whatever, it is recommended that you would include some quality and authorities into this project. It's essential, because if you'll do like we did a mistake with virtual training, we made it in a, let's say, IT department, but once we came to the quality, they said, oh, it's bullshit, you cannot work with that because there are some issues that you need to solve, and then we need to spend additional time. If you also go further with the digitalization, you need to search for repeatable processes, especially if you want to implement virtual reality, augmented reality, where you can save real money, because these technologies requires some investments. And the most probably important thing is to have innovative and passionate people, engage them into these processes. If it will be a management push strategy to implement the system or implement new technologies, it will not work. Start with the people and you'll achieve the success. And once you are ready for that and people are ready, please choose a good partner for the implementation. As Allan showed in his slides, there are a lot of suppliers. You need to check who is the best, who best fits your philosophy, your requirements, and do not save money here, because it will make a long-term effect for you. Okay, thank you. I hope I fit in my time.
Thank you, Ramūnas. Thank you. Excellent presentation.
I'll be available for the questions for all the time, so I'll answer later.
Modernization is started by people, and it's a recurrent theme across the presentations. Let's see. Let's welcome Ashwani Sharma, Aviation Advisor at Edgevarsity Learning System. Ashwani is a consummate aviation professional providing effective and stellar leadership in the field of airline and MRO engineering, with a proven track record of achieving stated goals within record time. Ashwani holds a record of getting various DGCA approvals for Air India Express and Air Costa in record time. Within a 45 plus years aviation career, that spans from aircraft maintenance, quality management, safety management, lease management, training and skill development, Ashwani has earned accolades from industry captains, national, international aviation regulators, peers, and associates. Ashwani's decisive leadership was a crucial factor in establishment and operation of Air India Express maintenance facility in India. Ashwani led the way for start of Air Costa operations and provided effective guidance for its expansion and safe operation. Leveraging his background in engineering, maintenance, quality, and safety, Ashwani was the moving force behind Edgevarsity's rapid growth as a pioneering organization providing online web-based aviation engineering training program for aeronautical engineers. Ashwani wrote the training content for many training modules, besides advising on digitization of the training modules. Ashwani earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering graduation with honors from Punjab University and obtained an aircraft maintenance engineering license. With his sound knowledge and understanding of aspects of aviation engineering, Ashwani is omnipresent at every international aviation conference as a speaker, presenter, panelist, and moderator. Welcome, Ashwani. We can't hear you. Your microphone is still mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Riccardo, for those kind words and a beautiful introduction, which is probably better than the content of my presentation today. Okay. At the outset, I would like to thank Innovin for giving me opportunity to make this presentation here. I would also like to add a disclaimer here that I am not an IT professional, and I am from old school of aircraft maintenance, but the many years that I have been around, I have seen the transformation from completely mechanical systems, so to say, to the digitalization systems that we have these days. And I have seen it all. And my presentation is more rooted to the ground, so to say, as against Allan's or Ramūnas, which is more IT related. I'm going to take you through the transformation as it happened in an MRO, which I have seen myself, that the way we were working 20, 30 years ago, and the way things are changing with the digitalization, and the way it's going to move forward in future. Few of those things have already been mentioned by Allan and by Ramūnas in their presentation, so there will be repetition. So sorry about that. But before I start, I would like to say a few words about Edgevarsity. Edgevarsity is a startup edutech company, which we started our concept of digitalize for providing web-based self-learning training for aeronautical engineers, aircraft maintenance engineers, etc. In the year 1918 or towards the end of 18, and we were almost ready with our launch when the pandemic hit, and that actually gave a fillip to our product, because the pandemic, brought in the concept of distant learning or self-learning, online learning, in a much starker fashion than it was earlier. It was available even before, but with the pandemic and the shutting down of classroom trainings, stopping of classroom trainings, it became more relevant, I would say, and to that extent, it helped us. And now we have, been working on these training programs, and as Ramūnas touched about virtual reality and augmented reality, our next project is replacement of the OJT, the on-the-job training, with the virtual reality and augmented reality, and we intend to launch that product in some time, in 6 months' time or so. So with that brief introduction, let's go over it. My first slide is about the ABCD to aviation. The kids in the kindergarten are learning alphabets, and everyone is somehow a victim or a contributor to the digital revolution. The pandemic also gets some credit to act as a catalyst, which I just mentioned. During the normal life cycle of any commercial aircraft, it undergoes 4 or 5 lease novations. This is from the lease perspective, and just a quick look on the web portals of those brokers who facilitate such ownership changes. Their first unique selling point would be to review the records online. So that gives you an idea that the voluminous records, which somebody mentioned, earlier speaker, that will fill a belly of the aircraft, are now available online or on a cloud platform. And a USP for a lessor or for a broker would be that you don't have to go through physically the archival records of the aircraft, and they are all available on a cloud platform, and you can just pull it from the cloud and review those records. Next slide, Simon. The other important aspect is virtual boroscope inspection. As the mechanic moves his probe, the experts team hundreds of miles apart, sitting in a different city or in a different continent even, can see the state of the blade or the vane inside the engine or the combustion chamber, and they can give an expert advice as to whether this engine should come off the wing or it can stay on the wing for a certain number of hours, etc. So that this revolution is come about due to the digitalization, which is taking place slowly. Here I might add that from the Indian perspective I'm talking about, the digitalization has been slow in the MROs. To begin with, there are historical reasons for that. MROs in India was a new concept. most of the infrastructure, a lot of funding to go digital. When the digitalization hit the aviation industry, and in an airline, when you are working in an airline environment, the funding is distributed over all departments, and maintenance and engineering, they get the last billing, so to say. Whereas MRO is specifically, doing only for maintenance and repair purposes. So there, the digitalization or the funding is much faster and much better than in an airline environment. So since in India, there were hardly any MROs, till about 10 years ago or 10, 15 years ago, I would say. There were only airlines who were having in-house maintenance capabilities or facilities. And so the digitalization was slow in the Indian context. Of course, it is now taking, making fast progress towards going fully digital, but we are far away from even the 2022 goal of paperless, completely paperless, which Allan showed in his presentation. I think it will take a little longer here, maybe 2023, 24, because the bureaucracy, we are all aware, it comes in the way. The regulatory authorities are even slower to react to the changes that take place, the modernization that happens. And in India, the regulatory authorities are still a part of the government. They are not an autonomous body. So the red tape or the bureaucracy, it slows down the process of complete digitalization. Next slide, Simon. Now, this is a concept which Ramūnas mentioned, and he said that they didn't have a very good experience. I am very sure that in India, none of the established MROs are using drones at the moment. I will have a slide at the end which will give us a brief overview of the digitalization that is happened or is happening in the Indian MROs. And I'm sure that the drones, they are considering, using drones for fuselage inspection, especially in the areas on the top of the crown and the rudder and the tail fin, etc. But presently, none of the MROs is using the drones for any inspection, and so they are losing out on the tremendous opportunities that it provides. The drones provide to do inspection. Next slide. Now, ACARS is known, and it is being used. Most of the airlines, they are using ACARS, and the ground engineer, he did not wait for the pilot report to find out what's wrong with the aircraft. With ACARS, the information is available to him, and the maintenance control center can direct the spare movement, the engineer's movement, the logistics can all be made ready before the aircraft lands, and of course this aspect is very well established in India as well. Next slide, please. Now I just pulled it out from the net. Just gives you an idea of 5G in aviation market. I mean, that was the heading of this graphic. At the moment, it's about 0.2 billion, but it's supposed to grow at a CAGR of 53.46%, and in the year 2026, the 5G, that means the utilization of the software systems, digitalization, everything with 5G speeds would be to the tune of $4.2 billion US. So that just tells you the extent of digitalization that's going to take place at what rate. Next slide, please. Now, this slide just gives you an overview of the TAT improvement using technology, basically digital technology. We all know TAT is critical for an MRO and as well as for the their customers. So from arrival to departure, the aircraft chocks on to the time it chocks off after doing a check for which it has, come into the MRO. You have various, agencies which interact with that. Ground handlers, etc., airport, fuelers, maintenance, cleaners, caterers, everybody. And the digital technology seamlessly connects all these. If it's completely digital, the airline operations, so the TAT can be improved, and for obvious reasons. Next slide, please. Now, this is the two of the platforms that OEMs are providing, Boeing and Airbus. You have airline fleet with ACARS connectivity, and on the other hand, you have the health monitoring user, that is the maintenance personnel. And when you have digital technology available to you and the software systems fully embedded in the maintenance as well as in the aircraft, I'm talking of the connected aircraft now, which are fully capable of digitally displaying and digitally transmitting the data from the central maintenance computer to the servers on ground. And the fault database is available in the data warehouse. The data from the aircraft fleet, which is in the flight, that is received via ACARS, and the maintenance personnel can then work on the data and find out the solutions much faster than it will be if the manual method are used. Next slide, please. Barcoding of job card in aircraft maintenance. Now, those of us who have worked in maintenance in aviation, we know when the aircraft is pulled in for maintenance in a MRO facility, the most talked about point would be how many cards are still remaining. Supposing for a major check you have 2,000 cards have been generated, 2,000 job cards. The progress of the work on that aircraft is in terms of the number of cards that are still open. Now, when you have barcoding, which is one part of the digitalization process, then it becomes very easy to track rather than somebody physically going over each desk, each section, each area, and with each mechanic how many cards he has and how many are open, how many are closed, and counting them. When you have barcoding, you have barcode readers, and the digitally or e-signature cards can be easily counted, and the tracking of the work on the aircraft is so much more easier and less painstaking than it is when you do it manually. Next, please. SP to task card conversion app. Now, I'm not very conversant with this slide, though I'm using it. There are obviously some apps which can convert your service bulletin to digitized task cards, and to that extent, the manual work that goes into it is reduced to a great extent. Next, please. Well, this is a very familiar slide. All those people who have worked in maintenance and with the leasing companies, they are aware of it. On the left-hand side, you see those plastic boxes with all the archival records, which keep moving from one lessee to another lessee, back to lessor, and then to the next lessee. And as I said in the beginning, once you have these digital systems and all the paperless environment, then all this is available on your screen, and you don't have to go through all these boxes and look for SPs and ADs and compliances, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, airline and MRO data sharing is still a bit of a I would say it's not as smooth as one would want it to be. Data is money. Everybody knows about that. How the data is shared is not a very well-established practice or settled law as one would say. Who owns the data? There are many players in this. There are aircraft owners, aircraft manufacturers, aircraft operators, lease operators, and lease owner, or, some banks who own these assets. So the data, who owns it and how it moves. Right now, I don't know if anybody puts a price on the data, but I am very sure that very soon the data will be weaponized by the various people when they realize that that's how important it is. So whether it is archival records or the maintenance data, when it moves from the operator, the OEM to the operator, to the lessor, to the MRO, whether it moves free or there is some value added to it, or there is any charge levied to it, that is still open. It's not yet codified in any relevant form or means. But I'm sure that very soon this is going to happen, and we'll all know about it. Next slide, please. This is what I was trying to tell. I tried to get some information about the status of digitalization of the MROs in India. I picked up 3 MROs. I didn't get the data from Airworks in time. The other 2 are the major MROs besides Air India Engineering Services Limited. Now, I gave them a questionnaire with these questions on the left-hand side, whether the digital sign-off is being used. That means e-signatures. It is not being used. Even AAR Indamar is proposed only. It's not being used. And percentage of digitization of work, all maintenance records are digitized in ERP, 100% for DMR, which is quite good. And the other one is approximately 95%, so that's also fairly good. Whether there is a data analytics cell, yes, there is an ERP cell, but the other one is only in proposed. Percentage of stack rectification based on data analytics, not applicable. The other one is saying about 90% or more than 90%. Percentage of digitization of records, that's the archival records. In GMR, it's 100%. The other one is still is proposed. Percentage of manpower trained in digital record keeping, 100%. Again, 90. So this gives you an idea of the status, and I would say that digitalization is fairly gathering speed in Indian MROs, but it is not yet 100%. And some of the reason why it is not happening is the regulatory authorities who are not yet given their green signal for complete paperless maintenance, and it's going to take some time. The other point I wanted to mention here is the slow progress of digitalization is the mindset. I mean, you can bring in, digital, everything digital, but it's the mindset of the personnel working on the hangar floor, the technicians, the engineers. They have to get used to using data. Many times an experienced technician, 35 years of service, he would tell you that, look, this is a simple, I know that this particular relay is bad, and that relay replacement will, why are you going into the steps that are being, given to you by Boeing or by Airbus, with a log algorithm based, that you replace this first and then check and replace this second and then check, etc., and then you come down to the real thing. So, as I think Ramūnas mentioned that the dilemma for a maintenance manager these days is whether to hire aircraft maintenance engineers or to hire data crunchers. Because when you are working with data, you make sense of the data. Data is in these days in exabytes. Every aircraft that flies a leg of 8 hours from point A to point B generates terabytes, if not exabytes of data. And to sift through that data and to get meaningful intelligence from that is a job of a data cruncher. It's not the job of a traditional aircraft technician. And one has to then strike a balance between whether to do the get the cruncher who will get useful intelligence out of it, or to give the job to a maintenance technician who from his experience can probably put his hand on the problem and solve it for you. So this is in a nutshell all about my presentation. And so that's all I had to say, and I hope that there was some useful intelligence in what I told, and I'll be available for answering any questions. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashwani. Very interesting contribution as well. It's my pleasure now to introduce Alexander Shipulin, management consultant at Lufthansa Systems. Alexander graduated as a civil aviation mechanical engineer in 2002 at Moscow State Technical University of Civil Aviation. 15 years of experience in airline technical operations at Transair Airlines, including areas of stores, supply chain management and logistics, line maintenance, reliability control, system engineering, delivery and redelivery, maintenance programs, heavy check. Management of change in tech ops, transformations in global markets and multicultural environments. Major projects at Aeroflot Russian Airlines, Malaysian Airlines, Air Arabia, Etihad, and many more smaller projects. I will also introduce Mike Harris, Head of Aviation, Defense, and Key Verticals at LexX Technologies. Mike started his aviation career in 1979 when he joined the Royal Australian Air Force as an apprentice maintenance fitter. Cutting his teeth on fighter aircraft, he spent the 80s learning about and engaging with the brand new world of computerized maintenance records. The fire was lit. In 2006, Mike joined then the fledgling airline Jetstar Australia and moved through a series of roles involving the engineering management system and engineering management. On his retirement from Jetstar in 2020, Mike was the manager, engineering, technology, and innovation, having also served as manager, engineering support system, and manager of engineering services. Mike's passion is around innovation and the use of data to make people's lives, jobs, and safety easier and better, particularly as it relates to aviation and maintenance. With a flair for seeing the less obvious links and potential, if not obvious, solutions, Mike has been recognized time and again, both formally and informally, for his innovative approach to problem solving. Mike has a mantra: innovation is about psychology, not technology, and constantly reminds people that technology is not always the solution. It is, of course, almost always part of the solution, as he likes to point out. Because of the way Mike sees the less obvious outcomes possible, he is driven to work with leading edge technology providers who are finding ways to make use of the big data available to solve what we all think are everyday problems that in many cases we don't even recognize as a problem to be solved in the first place. So Alexander and Mike are joining us, and the speakers that we have welcomed and listened to so far for the panel discussion. So welcome to all the panelists. The first question I wish to ask to all the panelists is how the use of existing technology, how to use existing technologies to work remotely and in a collaborative way. Alexander, Mike, would you like to?
Let me start. Thank you very much, Riccardo. To be very honest, I'm not prepared, and that kind of questions are completely out of the blue and a bit difficult to answer because what do we have as an existing technology? Technically, everybody has its own technology implemented or not implemented, used or not used. And there is no common answer of how to use it for remote work. Instead of answering that directly, I actually do like answering direct questions, but in this case, I don't have an answer because the varieties of technologies are very, very high. But what can be done in improvement of using it remotely to work remotely in MRO or airline technical operations area. First of all, I would say now it's a very good time to look back and think exactly where we need to use those technologies remotely. And I want to actually relay back to Allan's presentation. It was one very nice slide. I like it very much. Thank you, Allan, for that. Where you had on the left-hand side some technologies bench, I would say, the different fancy technologies like Internet of Things and so on, so on, so on. And on the right-hand side, the real deliverables of our business, what we actually should do and what we should deliver. And unfortunately, I also see it very often around the world, but the technology in itself getting more attention from airline than exact the business model. What should we have? Shorter TAT, productivity, and so on. But when people are concentrating on the technology, and this session also kind of pushing us to that. But let's make our work more virtual. For sure, we have a COVID-19, all that situation. We need to adapt somehow ourselves. But that's not the main goal for MRO, for airline, to be remotely workable organization. The main goal is to deliver the services to our customer, even it's internal or external customer. And here, I would say, first of all, everybody needs to really think about what is absolutely necessary to be somehow remotely and what is absolutely necessary to be physically present. And out of that, we can find the right technology to do that. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Alexander. Mike, please.
Yeah, thanks, Riccardo. It's an interesting question because it uses the term existing technologies. And I guess, you know, existing technologies makes us go to things like current databases, mobile phones and cellular coverage and things like that. And so when we use the word collaboration, I guess we all think we are collaborating. We're using phones to call each other and we're doing messaging and that sort of thing. But interestingly, in the maintenance area, one of the things that I came to observe in recent years was around a loss of knowledge from the maintenance people that are, you know, we've got a lot of people that are hitting that retirement age, and I jokingly talk about all that knowledge is sitting in a rocking chair in a lounge, in a robe, smoking a pipe now. And that's really valuable knowledge. And so those people that you would have wanted to collaborate with are retiring. And there aren't as many people left that have got that innate skill and what I call, you know, that deep wisdom of all those years of learning from the School of Hard Knocks. And so when it comes to collaboration now, it's a little more tricky to find the right people. And so what you have got is the few that are left, often in the maintenance control centers. You've got those deeply knowledgeable people, but they can't cope with all the questions. And, you know, they get totally bombarded. And sometimes it's very hard for them to prioritize who they're looking after. because everyone thinks their problem is the most important, but of course there'll be an AOG somewhere that really actually is important compared to some of the other stuff. And so the technologies that are emerging, and so I could say they exist now, but that doesn't mean that they've been thoroughly implemented. There are technologies emerging now where we're using artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we can get that deep wisdom back, because one of the joys of aviation is almost everything is written down. All those lessons that were learned over the last 30 years on A320s are written down and recorded somewhere. And so that wisdom is available. It's just deep in the data that everyone's got. And so if we can get the systems now to ingest and learn the manuals and learn from all the previous maintenance that's been done, and learn a company's own manuals, their expositions or the regulators' manuals, or even safety alerts and service bulletins, and we can collaborate, I'll use that term loosely, but if we can collaborate with the system that now has all of that knowledge, then we've gone a long way to fixing that gap, because truly collaboration should be about knowledge sharing. It's about one person helping another is what collaboration really is. And when those people aren't available, then we've now got the systems and the technologies to make that happen. We're still reliant on that underlying stuff. We're still relying on the databases, even though they're modern databases, we're still relying on them. We're still relying on forms of communication, whether that be textual or vocal. And we're still relying on some sort of network, whether that be cellular or satellite. You know, and I can see a world where even, you know, there's probably advances in that we know are coming. We just don't know what they look like yet. 5G will change the world, but it may not change the coverage. But we all know that it'll carry so much more data and so many different types of data that in itself will change the world. And so again, we say 5G's here, but I don't think we've really expanded and investigated what that truly means to ours or any other industry. So that's my position, and I hope that makes sense. It's, as Alexander said, it's a tricky question to answer, but I hope that helps. Thank you.
Yes, definitely makes sense. Mike, anybody? Ramūnas, Ashwani, would you like to provide your feedback?
Actually, maybe I refer to Alexander, what he mentioned, that this remote work collaboration is not an ultimate goal. It's like a feature of MRO. This is what we're facing. And this was a good example, as I mentioned in my presentation, that we did it 3 years ago. And now when the pandemic hit us, with the customers, there was no change. So we're just working as it is, because the remote work was already implemented. And as Mike said, that the biggest challenge is people, because when you try to convince, or let's say sell the technology to the business is accepting it by numbers, by business cases. But when you need to roll out this even positive business case into the hangar, and there is the mechanics that are not accepting it, then you face a problem. So you need to work. For example, for time tracking, precise time tracking, it took us 2 years to convince people to use fingerprints, to exactly sign that giving a timestamps and so on. So engaging the people and proving the technology will be essential to somehow implement it. This is what I see. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Ramūnas. Ashwani, please.
I just add on to what Ramūnas mentioned, and I said it in my presentation as well, that change of mindset is a very important factor in making any technology, new technology work. And as he said, that it took him a lot of time to convince people to use, a biometric attendance system, and similar is the case, I guess, in many other areas. But if I might go back to your question about the remote collaboration, if I understood you correctly, then I can cite 2 examples that we used when I was heading the engineering in Air Costa. We would use a video boroscope of an engine and send the data with through internet connection to the GE, and the GE engineers would have a look at the, the inside of the engine as the inspection is being done here in southern India, and they would then give us advice on, whether what we should do. And the second part was, which I don't know if it's working with Boeing and Airbus, but it definitely works with Embraer, and we were operating Embraers, and we would have a conference call, a video conference call every fortnight. Our technical services would gather in one room, and the experts in Embraer would gather in another room in San Jose de Campos in Brazil, and then we would exchange the data collected over the past fortnight from the central maintenance computer, and those guys would then give us some tips on maintenance tips, etc. So that was a brilliant collaboration, remote collaboration between OEM and an operator, and it helped immensely in maintenance. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience, Nick Rockman. Thank you, Nick. Aviation IT is very sticky, and the cost of change requires a clear business value understanding. Has COVID-19 crisis advanced the value case, and when will aviation MRO and airline budget cycles justify these changes?
If I may, so there are two parts to that question. The answer is, I believe absolutely. I believe that anything that's going to be disruptive, now is the time to do it, because you're already horrendously disrupted, to be honest. And so, now is the time to make the change. I think if you don't look for disruptive solutions now, you may come out the other side in a worse place than you went in, and that's assuming we all come out the other side, of course. But interestingly, I'm not finding anyone that's prepared to take that position. So everyone nods knowingly, yes, you're right, and then says, but we can't. And I'm especially seeing that in Australia. There seems to be a real lean towards, for want of a better word, doing nothing. So everyone's waiting to see what will happen. No one wants to make a decision. And interestingly, I spoke to a senior manager at an airline the other day, and we were talking about what was happening with their engineering staff and the exodus of people. And we were talking about the fact that now is exactly the time to be bringing in the types of technologies that we're working with, the fact that it'll help with that knowledge loss, etc. And he said, you're absolutely right. Now is when we need to do it, but I've got no one that will approve it. And so it's kind of, yes, we should, but no, we can't. The analogy I was given, by the way, was that they can't possibly think about Christmas dinner because they're too worried about whether they'll be able to afford dinner tonight. So, it's a double-sided sword.
If I may, absolutely agree with Mike. I also experienced the same situation with different airlines I'm talking to. However, here we should understand that yes, the investment in the technology right now could potentially bring us to a top position later on when all that COVID story will finish somehow. Hope for that. But at the same time, when a lot of thousands of people got fired, and technically airline industry, entire airline industry does not have money at all, what we can do in our MRO and the airline maintenance organization. What I experienced during the last decades, but we were growing so fast, and it was always on a firefighting mode. Like, okay, new fleet is coming to our line. Let's do something. Something is happening all around. Let's just close that hole. Let's firefight and implement something not even in technology, but even in some business process, just to close that hole, just to firefight. And now, when I would say 50% airline aircraft are grounded, and we have less jobs. I really, really appreciate Ramūnas' speech about how well performing Technics, perfect, but not all are doing that. So technically now it's a really time to look back at our business processes, regardless the exact IT technology or IT infrastructure we are using, but just look from a business process and understand, rate each and every business processes. Do we have a dead end processes? Should we really invest in some new technologies right now to make this process efficient, or it's just enough to tweak and somehow adopt it to the current situation, making a foundation for the future? As soon as our CEOs, the tops will give us the money, we anyhow need to have a good basement to implement something new. If we never had the normal store management system, please believe me, the whole RFID story will not help you until you fix it in a normal way and you understand, you make your shelves and racks properly, manage it, and so on. After that, you can just go and attach the RFID stickers everywhere, and you will be doing faster. But the basement should be done before, upfront, and now it's a good time to think about the basement and the basis in the business process.
If I might add,
yes, please.
Yeah, next question is about whether the IT change into aviation IT is adding any value. You see, we've just seen a disruption, which is probably the mother of all disruptions, this pandemic, COVID pandemic, and the airlines, again, I'm talking from an Indian perspective, were already on wafer thin margins. Most of them were not making any profits; they were probably in losses, and the distance learning, for example, the training on online training became a necessity because all training came to a halt because of the pandemic, and the airlines found value in going for the distance learning processes because it saved a lot of money, a lot of time for the airlines to get the trainings done without resorting to social physical distancing in classrooms, etc., etc. And I guess it became an imperative, and it hastened the process of remote training, and it also gave a impetus to the industry to go to the regulatory authorities and get the required approvals. I believe FAA, EASA, even the Indian DGCA, they approved up to the pandemic time, the trainings, there were no approvals existing for distance learning, at least in Indian perspective I'm talking about. Maybe FAA was approving level 1 trainings, but not level 2 and level 3 in the type trainings. With the pandemic, and it became imperative, so the authorities have also approved the distance learning training programs. So yes, to answer the next question, I would say a big yes.
Just to add here, Ashwani, thank you very much. You bring a very interesting topic up to our discussion. The training itself, I would say any kind of theoretical training is really a step forward, and everybody can benefit from distance learning. Technically, our discussion today is also a kind of a training, at least for sharing the thoughts. But what I personally a bit afraid of in a sense of technology, and maybe everybody can share your thoughts about that. This virtual reality on-job training. Being an engineer by nature, and now I'm a consultant, I feel a bit afraid of theoretically trained people, even if a project manager theoretically trained. They think they know everything, but actually never had a hands-on their real environment, the real machines, real engines, or real aircraft. So just to make it shorter, do you think if I will play Half-Life Alyx every day and shooting thousands of monsters, I will become a great commander in a real life? The same for aircraft mechanic. If he will be opening thrust reversers in a virtual reality, can he actually make it in real life when a connector is dirty, their pump is not working or not, and so on?
Alexander, I agree with you. There is no, you cannot replicate the hands-on experience in a virtual reality environment. I fully agree with you, but we can probably reduce the OJT requirements. I mean, I don't know from EASA or FAA perspective, but the Indian DGCA regulations require 288 hours of on-the-job training before a mechanic or an engineer can get a license or type license. So if by virtual reality, if we can reduce that to half even, which will save a lot of money for the airlines. So there is a lot of potential there, and I mean, we are, as I told you, Edgevarsity, we are working on that project, and we intend taking our work to DGCA India, our regulatory authority, and asking them to, if we can, replace the OJT, at least part of it, with our work, and hopefully we'll be able to achieve that.
Yeah, thank you. Periods like these are surely times where big disruptions, put all of us in front of big decisions to be taken, and the contribution, of course, of digital technologies to digital transformation is driven by all of us. As the next question, how could digital technologies such as AR, VR, remote technologies, big data, and drones help on reduce costs, greater efficiencies, and leaner operations?
Look, I'll start with big data because that's where I'm focusing at the moment. And I've been saying for a little while now that there's information stored in that data that we don't even think to look for as humans. There's a statistic that says that the amount of technical data in the world doubles every 87 days. And so if you think about it, that's obviously exponential. And so if you're a consumer of that data, whether that's a reliability engineer or a planner or the engineer that's actually working on the tools, it's really difficult to find the exact information you need without drowning in all the information that you don't need. And so I sometimes talk about, people talk about the value of their data, and I will often say, look, I think you're wrong. I think your data is a liability until you do something with it. Data it costs you to collect it, it costs you to store it, it costs you to back it up, it costs you to archive it, it costs you to keep it compliant, and so far it's just ones and zeros on a storage device somewhere that's costing you every time you turn around. But deep within that data there's information. If you're clever, you can turn that information into knowledge. And if you're even better, again, and that's where the modern technologies, artificial intelligence, machine learning, you can turn that knowledge into wisdom, as I said. And so, that wisdom is going to be able to help you to reduce costs. An example would be using that wisdom to help with fault finding, using that wisdom to help with planning, scheduling, quoting, all of those things. You can start, if you're an MRO provider, you should be able to use all of that information you've got to make sure that your quotes are much more accurate and you don't get caught on the other side. If you're an airline, you'll be able to use that information to make sure that you're getting the right price. You'll be able to use that information to help with, reducing engineering delays. You'll be able to use that information that if you are going to have a delay, to plan in advance for cancellations or reschedules, aircraft swaps, all sorts of things. As I say, there are patterns and patterns and information in that data that we don't even think to look for. If you think about, even if you had 10 of the most brilliant minds sitting there looking at the data, each one of those will still make their own interpretation, and there's no realistic way for them to share that with each other. The trick is for the one brain or mind or memory or whatever you want to call it to be analysing that in a way that it can just answer questions, and the question should be the same as I would ask you a question. The system has to be intelligent enough that it understands context. So if I talk about an earth fault, I don't want it to start searching around for things to do with the earth. I want it to understand that I'm talking about a short somewhere. If I give it a question around, hydraulics, I want it to understand what I'm talking about. Don't give me answers related to the word. If I was to go and talk to any other engineer, they would comprehend what I'm talking about and they would understand the context that I'm talking about. So if we can marry those two things together, if we can have systems that can mine that big data and find things that we didn't think to look for, but then communicate with us the way that humans communicate and can understand context and comprehend the question, then we've really made use of that data, and that will save money. The other thing it will do is it will increase safety. And I think that in itself saves money in the long run. Thank you, Kevin.
If I might add to Mike's point, as far as data analysis is concerned, I wish to make just 2 points. The first one is about the cost saving. Now, all of us who have been in the airline business in maintenance, we know AOGs, and AOG can wipe out 6 months profit for an airline, maybe a year's profit for an airline, just a single AOG. And if by data analysis one can prevent an AOG, then it's a no-brainer that the cost savings are immense as far as data analysis are concerned. But the other point, again, Mike mentioned is, as I said in my presentation as well, the data these days is in exabytes, and no human being is, can sift through that data sitting in front of a computer and get actionable intelligence out of it. It needs a software program, and that costs money again. So, and the better software program, the better the speed and the value of the actionable intelligence coming out will be much better. Now, I'm not an IT professional, and Ramūnas can correct me if I'm wrong, but unless you have a good software program, it is not possible to sift through the exabytes of data that is generated in aircraft system these days and come out with actionable intelligence, which will actually help you in saving money.
From my perspective, I can add, since we are independent MRO company and we need to fight for each customer, so our approach is not and innovations are not related to have one of them or to reduce the cost or whatever. We're focusing on customer satisfaction. So it means that if our primary KPI is a customer satisfaction, which is high enough, but the technologies are only supporting them. For example, if we will be able to reduce the TAT, the customer will be more happy. If we will establish a good communication with it, sharing the information, customer will happy with that. So all the technologies that we're bringing in our facilities usually goes through the process to understand how it will help us make customer more happy. If we reduce the cost, it means that we have more competitive pricing. If we increase the safety, we are more reliable MRO. And that's the key points from, let's say, our perspective.
And Ashwani, if I could just very quickly, your question about no computer program. We are on the cusp because of the amount of cloud computing that's now available. The systems can do the type of work required to get actionable intelligence from that data. It is just starting to emerge now that, you know, there is that much computing power available to anyone, actually, that you can achieve those types of outcomes. But I'll shut up now and hand back to.
The question I'm asking myself on that topic about big data in general and some other technologies also for improvement and the cost saving. Yes, absolutely. That's very big potential in those technologies as soon, and here I would like to revert back to Ramūnas' presentation, as soon we have trustable data. And also from a Technics presentation, we understood that at least the fingerprinting, the time tracking, took about 2 years for company to implement to get that data trustable. So backwards to a basic process, how we collecting that data for a future analysis, for a future benefits, we need to have a basics right. But our engineers are actually recording exact time, how much time they spend, but without additional breaks and I don't know, lunch time and so on. When we are using some materials, we are properly recording what we used that materials. When we fixing the problem, we are properly recording all troubleshooting process, how it was performed, not losing some steps. But what I can see in a real life, our engineers and the business processes in airline and also in the MRO are not always ready to collect the proper data for a future analysis, for a future intelligence. So bad data in, bad answer out from any machine. It cannot make a magic for us. And again, back to the basics, I think that at the current environment, the more benefit, the more savings in the time and material and the price and the cost we can achieve just by looking in our business processes with the existing technology, but not just to fix the problem as it is now, but making a foundation for future technologies, which can be the blockchain, the big data analysis, smart contracts, VR, wherever you want. But we need to prepare organization, and we need to prepare industry to properly collect the data, first of all. Now I can see a lot of things like even pretty easy thing in our eyes, probably electronic technical logbook. Not much data, not something like a rocket science, no artificial intelligence or something, but the process how some airlines are using that, it's really based on a 30, 20 years old paper process. We are just replicating the paper process by typing some characters into the screen. We need to rethink how to use the new technology to benefit from that, but not replacing the old process with from paper to e-paper, let's say. It's not making a lot of benefits.
And the other point that comes from there, then Alexander and Ashwani suggested this earlier, is then you will get the resistance from the end users. And,
sure.
You know, I'd like to think that we're now mature enough to understand that we need to make sure that there's something in it for the end users. So they need to see the real benefit. And in fact, you know, if a system is worth having, they're probably the ones that are going to management saying, we really need this. And the more useful it is for those end users, then the more useful the data they'll be prepared to put in it. Because if there's something in it for them, if there's a reason to put quality data in, then they'll be happy to do so. I think the other thing we need to remember is many of these end users started the job they wanted to do because they wanted to be up to their armpits in oil and grease. They didn't want to be typing on a keyboard. And so the moment we make them think that part of what they've got to do is type on a keyboard, the more they'll resist. And so again, it needs to be done in a way that makes them feel it's helping them. And it needs, you know, it's the proverbial, it needs to be done with them, not to them. But I think these days, it's really important that management should see the benefit because the end users see the benefit, not the other way around.
Thank you. We introduced partially the next topic, which is looking at the future. How will digital technologies change the way technicians work and shape the future aircraft maintenance?
So I'm working in this field right now, so I'd like to speak if I may. Thank you. So we are literally working on what we're calling a digital colleague. We don't think of it as a computer system so much as another employee. And in fact, one of the things we're working on is giving this digital employee a resume or a curriculum vitae, because it's an employee that just goes to work every day. Of course, it's actually working 24 hours a day. But unlike traditional employees, it never wants to go on holiday, it never gets sick, it never has any problems at home, it never looks for a job somewhere else. It's always happy to come to work, and it's always happy to share its information. And so, you know, when I was a young boy, my dad always told me you can't put a wise head on young shoulders. But I think now we're at a stage where we can almost, and in fact, when I was still at Jetstar and I was working on some of this stuff, I literally called it putting 40-year-old head on 18-year-old shoulders project, because that's what we're trying to do. So if we can impart and share the wisdom with someone who's only finished their apprenticeship a year ago, they now got access to the same wisdom as someone who's been working in the same place for 40 years, then we're making a difference. And the big difference is the lessons only need to be learnt once. So when I was a young man and I was working on aircraft, if something went wrong and I learnt a valuable lesson, the lesson from the School of Hard Knocks, I call it, then I would go into the sign-up room and I'd be writing it up. And I've now learnt that lesson. And maybe if someone was standing beside me and I was complaining about what had gone wrong, maybe that person also understood the lesson that had been learned, and then neither of us will do it again. But the reality is there's still 1,000 other people out there that didn't learn that lesson. But we're now in a world where that lesson can be instantly shared, but only when it's relevant. There's no sense sharing a lesson the way we all do now, which is we send out a electronic notification of some kind and we say to people, you will read this and you'll acknowledge that you've read it. But of course, at the moment they're reading it, it's not relevant. And then somehow we expect them to miraculously remember it 6 weeks from now when it is relevant. And in amongst all the other data that they've been ingesting and drowning in, both personal and professional, they don't remember it. But we've now got the ability to share that. You've got that little voice sitting on someone's shoulder saying, don't forget, there was a safety bulletin about this exact task. Don't forget, last time someone did this, they hurt themselves. Don't forget, there's a new service bulletin that applies to this. Don't forget, there's new regulations, or now this is now covered in the camo exposition or any of those things. So we can make sure that those people get the exact information they need at the exact time they need it, but not a moment before or after. And we've got systems that then continuously learn even from that interaction. Eventually, the system gets to know exactly how that person works and works the same way as they do. So it's as if you've got your best friend that always follows you around. Now, that best friend can't pick up a spanner and help you, but to all intents and purposes, they can do everything else. So I think that's the future. The future is a fully informed, a fully empowered technician. And what that actually will do is it'll democratize and decentralize decision-making. So instead of those people, you know, a junior person going into the office and asking the line manager, and the line manager saying, I don't know, so they'll go to the regional manager. The regional manager will say, I don't know, let's go to the maintenance control center to make a decision. In fact, we've empowered the very first person to make the decision then and there, which has two effects. One, it makes them feel better about themselves and they gain that confidence. And two, it reduces an awful lot of waste and expense. So that's the world, in my opinion, that we're screaming towards when it comes to making the life of those end users better and safer and more enjoyable. As I said at the start, all of those people wanted to fix airplanes. They hate doing stuff that's not fixing airplanes. The more we can let them fix airplanes and the less that they've got to search for stuff, the better they'll enjoy their job. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Any other contribution to this topic? Well, I have a question then. And in my daily activities, I work with people. And last year we faced, and I face tremendous change in what we do, as we went from mostly recruiting and supporting companies to recruit or adjust the structure, all the way into tons of questions about what do we do now, how do we handle the first lockdown and the second lockdown and the back to work and the work from home, and all the processes and the projects we have taken, put together over the past years, all across our 20 offices around the world, where digital people based. And we understand that the digital people process is a masterpiece in any company, no matter you're doing manufacturing, operation, MRO, servicing, whatever you do, trading, is the mindset of the top management and the middle management going from pre-COVID to post-COVID is changing and it has to change. So about the digital people, about people development in your organizations, new leadership, what have you done? What are you going to do to create a sound environment for the future digital MRO?
In my opinion, it's unavoidable. So that's why we started, as I mentioned a couple years ago, to implement all the lean philosophy, which includes one of the key things, it's continuous improvement. And it became our company value as well. So this leads company to constant change. So we are adopting to any changes that will come. And what you have mentioned about this digital generation of people, they will come. They are already coming to the hangars. They cannot understand how the mechanics are working with the paper. Some of them, I think 10 years later, will be the people who never will be touched paper. So if you give them a regular paper, will not understand what to do. Will try to touch it or click it, and nothing will happen. So if you believe that, I believe as well that if the current MRO company will not have a right strategy how to adopt faster to the changes, it will be a big limitation, or this MRO company may fail. So it was a good thing that previously big companies eat at small companies. Now fast companies eat slower companies. Yeah, so that is it. If you are very agile, fast, you are able to drive changes very fast in very good way, standardized, then you will be successful. So I think you need to focus on the ability to adopt the environment to all the changes, and then the people will be just like an input to this. It will not be a critical thing. That's my opinion here.
If I might add one point here, just okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Then Alexander, thank you.
Okay, just wanted to add here a few things about the management of change, and totally agree with Ramūnas about the constant change. So as probably many of you know, the standard change management model from Mr. Levin, that we cover 3 phases: unfreeze, delivery change, and freeze a change to sustain the changing processes for quite long period of time. So in our current environment and nowadays, I would say this model already changing to the third step: unfreeze, delivery change, freeze to understand the benefits, and repeat it again. Go back to unfreeze mode and adopt the changes which are required to be adjusted somehow, because as soon as we define in any process, implement in any technology, immediately by the end we need to wait the results and make the inputs, the backwards inputs, to the beginning of the process to adjust it to the needed way. So continuous change and continuous improvement is a key.
Ashwani, please.
I just wanted to add that the change is inevitable, and an MRO's capability or his ability to attract business will depend on the IT, the sound or robust IT system that it has. In future, that would be the model, I guess. And unless an MRO can demonstrate to the prospective customers, and to use Ramūnas' terms, if it's a slow MRO, they are not going to get any business. As against if faster MRO option available to an airline, they will opt for the faster MRO. But then the compatibility of the IT systems will become an issue. There are various options, various models available in the market, but definitely an MRO's value or worth of an MRO would be in how IT equipped it is, how best it can dovetail with the IT systems of the customers. The one MRO which can boast that they have such IT systems that they can handle any IT systems of any airline, they'll probably be the winners or the leaders of the pack.
I've just got one quick comment about leadership, Riccardo, because I think that was where you were going. There's a couple of leadership styles that the negative ones that I think will need to go in this modern world, and that's to do with ability to adopt emerging technologies. And there are two particular traits that I think will just kill innovation. And the first one is the people that I call the "if it's not my idea, it's not a good idea" people. And you'll find those in businesses that just, for whatever reason, unless they introduce it, they'll just fight it tooth and nail. And the other one, and this is not so much a direct trait, and I don't think people even recognize it in themselves, but because we're often talking about engineers want to fix things. And so one of the things that I noticed in engineering management was there was this penchant for really enjoying fixing crises. And so what I found was they were so good at fixing crises, they never wanted to actually do things that would stop the crises occurring in the first place. It was almost like the adrenaline rush had become addictive. And so I think when we talked about ways to stop the crises happening, stop to think about ways to really introduce strategy that would let us look at a better tomorrow, I don't think it was deliberate, but subconsciously they're thinking, but what will I do? If there's nothing to fix, then what's my job going to be? And I just don't think they could see it. And so those type of personality traits will kill innovation. And I think it's been said in many different ways, many different times tonight. If people don't innovate, if companies aren't innovating, they will become so irrelevant so quickly that they'll just disappear quietly and we'll forget they even exist. They've really got to work hard to remain relevant in this modern age, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Mike.